I have had a great trumpet career. Most of my adult life, I've been able to honestly say, that there are people who would die to have this lifestyle. This. Hello, everybody, trumpet players, musicians, and anyone else that wants to listen. I want to start a new series of videos where I talk about my 30 years. Why am I saying it that way? 30 years as a professional trumpet player. It makes it sound like it's over. I am in the middle of a musical career change. Huh, it's official now, huh? I'm going in a different direction from where I've gone in the past, and I want to, because the first 30 years were marvelous. I have had a great trumpet career. Most of my adult life, I've been able to honestly say, that there are people who would die to have this lifestyle, what I do for a living. There are people, and in fact, I think that's one of the reasons why the gig scene in Houston has changed is because, and this might be a little arrogant, but I think I was part of the one of the people that demonstrated that life as a trumpet player in Houston, that's a good thing. You know, with my internet presence and see, I've had an internet presence since the mid 90s. And I've written articles for the ITG that talk about Houston, and I think it's partly my fault why we have so many trumpet players here today. Anyway, so at least partly. I'm not so arrogant that I think I started a whole movement, but um, yeah. Anyway, so what are we talking about today? This is the first anecdote I'm going to be sharing in this series. I'm going to be sharing anecdotes from my career, stories from my career. And the first one is because of the album that we're going to release this week. I'm recording this I'll try to get it published today, but I'm recording this on Tuesday, the 13th of January, 2026. We're releasing an album called Trumpet Meditations on Thursday. And the whole album, it's 16 tracks. All 16 tracks are 100% improvised. And not just 100% improvised, but 100% no plans. So the way I improvise is when I do these kind of improvisers, I'm not talking about jazz or anything like that. When I do this kind of improvisation, I actually start off with no thoughts whatsoever. There might be occasionally an exception, like there's one on there called Buddy Cisco. Buddy Cisco had just passed away, and so I wanted to approach it as a lead player playing jazz, and so I had lead player equipment on. So there was at least that much planning beforehand. All the others, with a couple exceptions, um, completely unplanned. When I start, I don't know what style I'm going to play. I don't know what key I'm in. I don't know what harmonic development I'm going to do. I don't know any of that stuff. I don't know how avant-garde is going to sound. I don't know any of that. I start whatever I play first inspires what I play next. Whatever I play next inspires what comes after that. It's a very fluid process, but what always comes out is a legitimate composition. So the improvisations I do are spontaneous compositions, if that makes sense. So what anecdote do I have for you that's in alignment with that album? I actually got called in the mid-90s to play at a Catholic church on Easter morning. They wanted my brass quartet. Back in those days, I was publicly making available my brass quintet, the Bravado Brass. And this Catholic church hired me to do Easter Sunday. And they had a sunrise service, but they didn't want the full brass. They just wanted me to play by myself. The guy asked me, Eddie, can you do that? And, it's mostly prelude stuff, postlude stuff. And I took the job. We did it. And that whole first service was me by myself. Now, I did have a few written pieces that I could play, but the time I was supposed to be playing needed more than just that. And I improvised most of that time. And what was interesting about it is that all of the improvisation I did was 100% appropriate for a church service, an Easter church service. How cool is that? Huh? I'm actually a little bit more proud of that than my best jazz solo I ever took, right? The fact that I can go into a situation and on the fly, spontaneously, create music that's appropriate for church on Easter Sunday. I improvised hymns, I improvised sort of Bach-sounding stuff. And yes, and here's the best part. The people loved it. They didn't say, oh, Eddie Lewis improvised in my church service. They didn't have a clue that I was improvising. They didn't have a clue. How are they supposed to know that what I was playing was something I just made up on the spot and not some Vivaldi thing or some Bach thing? Or how are they supposed to know that? They don't know that. I've done this before with my band. We would play a wedding and we'd play an original piece of music. Did they know that it was original? No. How are they supposed to know that? There is one time. Now, this is not improvisation, but there was one time that my brass quartet played a wedding. This back in the 90s again. I stopped doing the leader stuff except for the jazz stuff. I stopped doing leader stuff in the 80s just because, not the 80s, after the new millennium, because I was just working so much with other people's bands. I didn't have to generate my own work, right? I had as many as 12 gigs a week back in those days. And I just didn't have time to book bands. Anyway, but when my brass quartet was working, we did one of my originals, and I'm not making this up. It wasn't actually a wedding, it was a wedding reception. And we did one of my originals. And two couples got up to dance to a brass quartet. Huh? Two couples got up to dance. They didn't say, oh, this guy's playing original music at the wedding reception. How dare he? No, they liked it so much they got up and danced. You know, this is sort of like the recently at church, I was playing one of my original compositions beforehand, not officially a postlude, but I was wanting to see what would happen if I was, because usually before church starts, it's just silence. So I thought, let me play a little bit and see what happens. You know, maybe I can start doing postlude music before church starts. And the third piece that I played, all three of them were original. The first one, everybody that was in the sanctuary clapped. I didn't mean for that, but that's not why I'm doing it. But they clapped. It was an original piece. They don't know it's original. But the point I'm making is the pastor comes in while I'm playing the third piece and he says, "What piece is that?" And what the impression he gave me is he was trying to figure out where he heard that before. So, and I said, well, I haven't given it a name yet. And but yes, if it's done well, original music. Let me add a little bit more to that. When I started writing music and sharing it with people, now my first compositions were in the 7th grade, 8th grade. When I got to high school, I started sharing that. And previously, it was just stuff I wrote for myself, right? In high school, I started sharing it. And I shared one of my pieces with a teacher. I think it was a trumpet duet. And this teacher said, "That's not an original composition. That sounds like something." Those are his exact words. "That's not an original composition. That sounds like something." And so to me, from where I am today, what he meant was that original music doesn't sound like anything. Right? That's how I interpret what he said, because what he was expecting, because of how music was in the 70s and the 80s, how original music was back then, it was basically musical nonsense. The whole point of it was to try to take what Schoenberg did and go the next step. Right? I don't have any problems with Schoenberg. I like to listen to Schoenberg. But what came after Schoenberg was just a lot of nonsense. I'm sorry. I'm speaking in general, but I think musically speaking, on the classical side, original music, this is what I'm saying. I know it's just anecdotal, but this is what I'm saying, is that it got so bad academically that the teachers, the ones who taught music, expected original music to sound terrible. And if it sounds like something, it can't be original. That's where the mindset was 40 years ago, right? So when we talk about improvising in public and playing original music, in the past, I'm talking 40 years ago, in the past, the idea was that was not for public consumption. That's how the attitude was back then. This is not for public consumption. If it was original, if it was improvised, it was not for public consumption. The masses were not supposed to like it. The masses were not supposed to understand it. And yet, here I am, and I'm going to work my way back to the album, to that gig. Here I am with a brass quartet, and the people get up and dance to my original music. And in fact, that whole wedding reception, I think it was a 2-hour gig. We played 2 hours of my music. There were only a few other things in there that we played. So let's go back to the Catholic gig, the Easter Sunday morning gig. I played church music off the top of my head, and people loved it. They loved it. I got so many people to come up and compliment specifically, and they would ask, what's the name of that song? Did I tell them that it was improvised? No, I did not, because I was afraid to do that. I was afraid to do that. Yeah. So, I have been improvising classical music, jazz, whatever style. I can improvise marches, I can improvise waltzes, I can improvise polkas, of course, all the jazz stuff. And I've been doing this. You know, the improv thing for me goes back to when I was in junior high. I was experimenting already with improv. You know, there are some guys that take the improv stuff to the limit. I'm talking about the solo improv. There's a guy named Pete. I can't remember his last name. He's got some really... my assumption is he's a student. Is it an assumption, or is it something I read somewhere? Pete is a student of the Bill Dixon. I'm a big fan of Bill Dixon. I don't play like that. Just like with Maynard, I'm a big fan of Maynard. I have no desire to play like Maynard. And same thing with Bill Dixon. I love to listen to Bill Dixon. And in the same way, this guy Pete, I'm sorry I can't remember his last name. Pete takes Bill Dixon to a whole new level. And it's some awesome, awesome, awesome playing. He is, when we talk about people who take something to the far ends of how far it can go, he is, for the avant-garde trumpet, solo trumpet thing. Pete is, there's nobody that can do better than him, I don't think. There are people who I think have imitated Pete since, but wow. I can't help but admire that kind of work, and it is, you know. I read the comments sometimes, and people are very brutal with him, because it's not the traditional stuff, right? And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because that's not what I do, and when we use the word free improvisation, that's what people come to expect. And don't get me wrong, I don't put him in that category where it's just trash. I don't put him in that category. And by the way, there's this new thing I'm trying to encourage people to change the way they think. Just because something is hard doesn't mean it's good. And when I say I admire Pete's playing, it's not because what he does is so hard. Yes, it is hard. That's not why I admire it. I admire Pete's playing because he takes all that stuff that is hard and he makes absolutely gorgeous music out of it. Maybe you don't agree with me. That's how I feel about it. He makes that work. That's the skill. It's not being able to do stuff technically that other people can't do. That for me, that's not what gives it value. That's not where the value comes from. The value comes in how he makes it work. He actually makes beautiful music. I forget the name of the song he did um, in one of the cathedrals. But for me, that's a virtuosic masterpiece. I'll try to find that and put a link in the description. Um, anyway, my point to bring him up is that my album is nothing like that. My album is more neo-romantic, neo-classical. Um, I improvise uh, classical, romantic, a little bit of maybe Baroque sounding stuff. And there's some jazz in there too. Like I have a blues in there. Actually, there are two blues. The Buddy Cisco one is the blues, and also the No AC blues is in there as well. Um, so anyway, yes, all of this, the the I was talking about the how I've been improvising my whole life. And when I was in high school and college living in El Paso, I used to go up into the mountain or out into the desert, and it wasn't practice. I didn't think to myself, hey, let's go out into the desert and practice. Let's go up into the mountain and practice. No, I went up into the mountain, oftentimes sitting on the edge of a cliff with my feet hanging over the side. I used to do that a lot. I'd go up into the mountain, go the back side of the cliff. Don't think I went up the front side of the cliff. I don't. I did. I tried that one time. Won't do it again. I went up the back side of the mountain to the cliff, hung my feet over, and I'll sit and I'll play for 30 minutes, just whatever comes to my mind. And I've been doing that. Then when I went to UTEP, I used to do it in the quadrangle. There's a square space between the art building, the theater building, the music building, and I used to sit there late at night, 2 a.m, and improvise. So this improv thing has been part of what I've done since I started playing trumpet. I've been doing this improv stuff. Um, but I'm going to tell you, this kind of improv that I'm talking about, where I'm creating compositions on the fly like this, the first time I ever got paid for that was that Catholic Easter service. And that, you know what? Isn't that awesome? For someone who has dedicated his whole life to Jesus Christ, or at least tries to do so. Isn't it awesome that the first time I did this thing that I love so much, and I do love it, I love improvising like that. The first time was at church. And I got paid for it. And so we didn't get that gig the next year because my band was subbing for another band that couldn't make it that year. Okay, so I tell you that they loved it, And so I wish the rest of the story was they had me back every year, but no, I was subbing for another brass quartet. But yes, um, like I said, this new series, I want it to be basically reminiscing and those kind of anecdotes about things that have happened in that wonderful career I had that spanned over 30 years. During that time, most of that time, I was considered one of the top trumpet players in Houston. I don't believe that's true anymore, and that doesn't bother me to say so. 30 years, 30 years of now. Actually a better player now than I was back then. Um, and but like I said, this is a career change. I'm going in a different direction now, and we'll tell you more about that as we get deeper into it. But it's kind of good for me to actually say it out loud. We're going in a new direction, and being a gig rat isn't part of it. So I'm very excited, very very excited to be doing this. I think our best years are ahead. Anyway, so this is kind of a long video, because it's two things, right? It's the first video in a new series, but it's also the reason we're starting this series now and using this anecdote as our first one is because of the album that just came out. We want you to check it out. Part of the reason why I wanted to do this is to demonstrate the fact that I've been improvising. This has been a lifelong pursuit. I've been improvising, let's put it this way. I've been improvising the whole free improv thing with unaccompanied. I've been doing that since 4 years before I even started playing jazz. Think of it that way. I've been an improviser for longer than I've been a jazz player. And in fact, when you come to me for jazz lessons, jazz improv, I will tell you one of the things I'll say, maybe not in the first lesson, maybe not the second lesson, but somewhere during the beginning lessons when you start with me, I will tell you that jazz improvisation is 2 subjects. Improvisation and jazz. The improvisation part is easier to learn. It is much harder to be a jazz player than it is to be an improviser, because jazz has language, and it takes really a whole lifetime to learn that language. So anyways, but how was I able to see them as 2 different subjects? Because I've been improvising for so long. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I will put links in the video here for, we're talking about 2 things, the Peter thing, Peter, whatever his name is, that link, because I do think it's awesome and I think people should listen to it. And if you don't like it, give it some time. Don't let the fact that it's different set you off. Give it a chance. I'm not saying you have to like it, but give it a chance. Give it a chance, because if you just have a knee-jerk reaction and decide you don't like it, you're missing out. But anyway, and the other thing we'll put a link for is the album when it comes out. Now, this video I hope to put out today. I will add the link to the album on Thursday if I hope I remember. Anyway, God bless you guys. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you on the next video. Thank you.